You ever have one of those moments where you know the universe is setting someone up for their own downfall? Well, that's exactly what happened the night. The HOA tried to play hero and reported me to the fire marshal. Here's the catch. They forgot one tiny little detail. I am the fire marshal. It started on a crisp autumn evening. The ranch had been quiet all week, and I decided it was the perfect night to burn some old fence posts and brush I'd cleared. Nothing big, nothing reckless, just a controlled bonfire in the pit I'd used for years. I had my permits, my safety lines, even a water tank nearby, because I don't mess around with fire. But to the HOA, fire safety wasn't the point. It was about control. See, ever since I bought this land, the HOA president, Patricia, had been trying to treat me like one of her neighborhood minions. She didn't like that my ranch stretched right up against her subdivision. She didn't like that I had cows, or that my trucks weren't aesthetic enough for her taste. And she sure as hell didn't like that my Friday night bonfire wasn't listed in her community calendar. Around 8 p.m., I noticed headlights creeping up the gravel road. Patricia herself, phone in hand, glaring at the glow of my fire like she'd just caught me committing a felony. She didn't wave. She didn't say a word, just snapped pictures and drove back out like she was on a mission. I knew what was coming. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, my work phone rang. Dispatch told me there'd been a complaint about an uncontrolled blaze endangering nearby homes. I almost laughed. Here I was, sitting in my own lawn chair with a thermos of coffee, being reported to myself. I figured I'd let this play out. Instead of calling it off, I suited up, grabbed my official truck and drove out, sirens and all. Neighbors peeked out their windows, expecting chaos. Patricia was already waiting with her arms crossed, smug as could be, convinced she'd just won. When I stepped out of that truck in uniform, clipboard in hand, her face drained of color, she tried to recover, stammering about community, safety, and rules everyone must follow. But I just looked her dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, I am the fire marshal. And this fire? It's as safe as it gets." That was only the beginning of her humiliation. Patricia froze, her mouth opening and closing like she'd just swallowed a bug. The crowd that had gathered behind her, neighbors in slippers, clutching mugs of cocoa, were expecting a showdown. Instead, they got the sight of their almighty HOA president being schooled in real time. I clicked my pen against the clipboard, slow and deliberate, letting the silence hang. "Now, Patricia," I said, voice steady, "since you reported a fire hazard, let's go through the checklist together. You'll want to learn something tonight." I walked her closer to the bonfire. The flames cracked softly, throwing sparks skyward, but everything was contained. A 6-foot ring of stone circled the blaze. The brush was stacked neat, dry, and controlled. The water tank sat 20 feet away, hose coiled and ready. Clearance from any structure, I asked loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Over 50 feet. Patricia shifted, her smile twitching nervously. "Well, it just looked dangerous," she muttered. I nodded, writing that down as if it mattered. "Looks dangerous, but isn't. Got it." I turned to the neighbors. "Folks, for the record, this fire is legal, permitted, and by the book safe." A few of them chuckled, and I could see phones come up, recording. Patricia's iron grip on this neighborhood was already slipping. Then came the real kicker. I pulled out the official seal, stamping my inspection sheet right there on the hood of my truck. "Approved by the fire marshal." Tore off the yellow copy and handed it to Patricia like it was a citation. "Congratulations. Your HOA just sponsored a free fire safety demonstration." That stung. Her face flushed red under the flickering light. She jabbed a finger at me. "This isn't funny. You're undermining my authority in front of the entire community." I leaned in just enough to make her uncomfortable. "Patricia, your authority ends at the subdivision gate. Out here? This is my land, my fire, my jurisdiction. And if you keep filing false reports, it won't just be embarrassing, it'll be criminal." The murmurs grew louder. A few neighbors actually clapped, and one man yelled, "About time someone put her in her place." Patricia spun on her heels, storming off toward her car. but not before muttering something about taking this to the board. As her taillights disappeared, I settled back in my chair. The fire popped, sending a trail of sparks upward. The neighbors lingered, smiling, even asking if they could bring marshmallows next time. And I knew then this wasn't over. Patricia wasn't the type to back down after one blow. The next move she made would turn petty into dangerous. Patricia didn't waste any time. The very next morning, I woke up to a letter slid under my gate. Big HOA letterhead at the top, her signature scrawled like she thought she was some kind of judge. "Cease and desist all outdoor burning," it read. "Pending board review and fines for non-compliance." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. She really thought her neighborhood bylaws could override state fire codes and my own authority as the fire chief. Still, I pinned that letter to my fridge like a trophy. But I also knew Patricia wasn't bluffing. She'd escalate. Sure enough, 2 nights later, I heard voices outside the fence line. A group of HOA board members had gathered, flashlights bobbing through the dark. They were snapping pictures of my yard, my woodpile, even my water tank. I grabbed my jacket and walked out to meet them. "Evening, folks," I called, making them jump. "Something I can help you with?" Patricia was at the front, clutching her clipboard like a sword. "We're conducting an investigation," she declared. "You've created a hazardous environment, and as representatives of this community, we're obligated to act." I crossed my arms, trying not to grin. "Investigating a fire pit that passed official inspection by the fire marshal? That's you," one of the board members blurted. "You can't just inspect your own fire." "Actually, I can. It's literally my job. State law doesn't say I have to stop being fire marshal just because." Patricia doesn't like my bonfire. They grumbled, shifting uneasily. Patricia, though, wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, dialing right there in front of everyone. "If you won't take responsibility, we'll get someone who will. Let's see how the county fire department feels about this." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. "Patricia, who do you think runs the county fire department?" Her face froze mid-smirk. The realization hit her like a bucket of cold water. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "Fine, then I'll go higher. State level. Maybe even federal. You won't get away with this." The board members exchanged looks, clearly regretting following her out here. One of them whispered, "Patricia, maybe we should let this go." But she wouldn't. She was too deep, too stubborn. And that's when I knew she'd overplay her hand. She wasn't going to stop at false complaints. She was going to try something reckless. And reckless, when it comes to fire, is a whole different kind of dangerous. I didn't have to wait long to see how far Patricia was willing to go. A week later, I got a call from dispatch. Not about my fire, but about a blaze near the subdivision's clubhouse. Someone had tried to burn a pile of leaves and branches behind the tennis courts. No permit, no water source, no safety ring. Just dry kindling stacked in the wind. Guess whose name witnesses gave? Patricia's. By the time I rolled up in my truck, the flames were licking dangerously close to the wooden fence. Neighbors stood around, panicked, some with garden hoses spraying wildly. And there, in the middle of it, was Patricia, red-faced, shouting orders, insisting she had everything under control. I jumped out, barking commands. My crew, already on scene, doused the blaze in minutes. But the damage wasn't to the clubhouse. It was to Patricia's reputation. "Patricia Hendress," I said loudly, clipboard in hand, "you've just committed an unpermitted burn in a residential zone, endangered property, and ignored safety regulations. That's a fine and a misdemeanor." Her jaw dropped. "You can't charge me. I'm the HOA president." "Exactly," I shot back. "You should have known better." The neighbors didn't miss a word. Phones recorded as I wrote her up on the spot, handing her the pink slip that spelled out fines, citations, and mandatory safety training. The murmurs started, people whispering, shaking their heads. A man near the back yelled, "So the fire marshal was right, and you nearly burned us out." Others followed, voices rising. Patricia's support crumbled right there on the pavement. She tried to rally, blaming me, calling it a setup. But when my crew hauled off the smoldering pile, The evidence was clear. This was her doing, and nobody was buying her excuses anymore. Within days, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Not to discipline me, but to vote Patricia out. Neighbors told me later the motion passed almost unanimously. All her scheming, her complaints, her fake authority, it had finally backfired. As for me, well, I went back to my ranch. That Friday night, I lit another bonfire. Bigger this time, safe, contained, legal. And something was different. This time, neighbors came willingly, carrying marshmallows, hot dogs, even guitars. What Patricia tried to use against me had turned into the very thing that brought the community together. I leaned back in my chair, the fire's glow reflecting in their faces, and thought, sometimes the best way to deal with an HOA tyrant is to let them light their own downfall. And Patricia, let's just say she won't be calling the fire marshal again anytime soon. If you enjoyed this crazy HOA story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below with your own HOA or Karen experience. I'd love to read them. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you never miss the next story.